Hi, and welcome to Inside Tacoma. I'm your host, Sonia Hallam. Joining me today is Council Member Joe Bushnell. Hi, Council Member Bushnell. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Super happy to be here.
So you represent District 5.
That's
tell
right.
Tell me about your district and the area that it covers.
So District 5 encompasses south of 56th Street all the way to McKinley and to the city limits. It incorporates the neighborhoods of South Tacoma, the South End, and a bit of the East Side Tacoma area.
And tell us a little bit about the district.
The district is pretty large, as I just mentioned, and very diverse. Each neighborhood has its own distinct challenges and opportunities. And we have a lot of really great people out there and a lot of great places to eat, a lot of great places to shop. It's a really fun district to be in.
Now, you're a lifelong resident of Tacoma, is that right?
That's right. Born and raised.
So I'm curious, over the many years that you've lived in Tacoma, tell me about some of the things that you've seen that are the same as they used to be, and some of the things that you've seen that have changed, that are different.
Yeah, I'll start with some of the things that are the same. Growing up, I was always surrounded by really great people. The community has always been great, and I feel that still remains today, the sense of Tacoma and the pride we have for our city and everybody that lives here. And we're always really looking out for each other and trying to have a helping hand with each other. So that's something that's been consistent that I've seen through my life. Some of the challenges that I've seen evolve or changed over time, we've had a lot of challenges in Hilltop when I was younger. I used to live in Salishan on the east side before the Housing Authority completely revamped it to what it is today. There's a lot of new streets and freeways. Obviously, they started the project on I-5 when I was 10 years old. They only just finished it, like last year. So it's a generational thing. So a lot of big changes, but it's been really great to see those changes over time.
And what are some of the other things that you've seen around the area? Things like climate. Have you seen a difference in the climate issues since you've been a young kid?
Yeah, even in my short time on this earth, I've noticed a difference in the climate. And talking with my parents and grandparents, they've even seen that change as well. It's something I take very seriously as a council member, and I know that the city does as well through our climate action plan. And it's a really comprehensive plan that we're working through. Certainly, it's a larger problem than just the city ourselves can solve, but there are certainly a lot of big steps we can do here locally.
So a big issue or a big topic like the climate action plan, how do you as a council member champion the issues and perspectives of your district?
Yeah, so one of the things that I've been able to champion being in District 5 is our tree canopy cover. In particular, if you look at our equity index, and if nobody's checked that out, definitely check it out online, Tacoma's Equity Index. And it's a really fantastic tool that shows you, based on a lot of different metrics and data, some of the disparities we have historically in the city. And one of those disparities is our tree canopy cover. And the South Tacoma, the South End area, and East Side areas has a historically lower tree canopy cover than other parts of our city. And those have pretty significant impacts on the health and well-being of our residents, as well as lowering the heat climate effect for our area. And so one of the big things I've been doing personally is volunteering my time to plant trees in our neighborhoods, trying to encourage others, residents, to do the same. We have multiple programs within the city of Tacoma for getting tree plantings and working with local nonprofits. So you can get a free tree in front of your own home, and they'll even help you with like a gator bag, which wraps around the tree, and you can water it. And even in hot summer months, you'll be able to keep those trees watered so they'll stay alive and be able to provide the shade for the future generations that we really need.
And if someone is interested in taking advantage of that program, where would they go to get that information? Would that be on the city's website?
There's information on the city's website. There's another fantastic organization called the Tacoma Tree Foundation. Highly recommend checking that website out. The executive director, Lowell, is a fantastic person, and he's got a great team behind him. And we also, they recently put together a climate leadership cohort, which I had the opportunity to speak to a few weeks ago.
So tell us more about that.
Yeah, it's a great opportunity for folks in the community to come together and try to be leaders in climate change actions and things that we can do here locally. It was an opportunity for them to gather, to speak with each other, to learn about all the different organizations that are doing great climate work here, but also the steps that they can take within their own communities to make sure that we're pushing the needle in climate change at all levels of local and federal and national government as well.
Sounds like a great opportunity.
It is a great opportunity. I believe this is the second class this has been done.
So I want to go back to something you said a little bit earlier. You mentioned the equity index and the city's equity map. It is used for a variety of different purposes, not just the climate work. Can you talk a little bit about the equity map and the value that it brings to you on the council? What do you use it for?
Yeah, the equity map is a tool. It's not our end-all be-all, but it's an awesome tool to help guide policy decisions and kind of allocate resources within our city. We have a lot of historical disinvestment in different parts of our city, and that really bears out in the data. And the mapping software really shows you that data in a way that's really easily digestible. And since it's public, not only the city can use it, but nonprofits, businesses, other organizations can use it as well in order to engage in different communities that might not have historically had those investments made or have really been thought of. And so one of the ways I use it, for example, is going through and seeing where, like I had mentioned with trees, but also seeing where I might direct more efforts personally in engagement with the community that might not have seen it in the past. Hosmer being one of those areas, and I think it's just a really fantastic tool for the city and the community at large. And it's a leader nationally. One of our employees just recently got recognized for the work, the equity index mapping work nationally. And so we're really leading in this area in trying to provide investment into underserved areas.
Yes, it's been the whole equity index, the indicators on the equity index, the map, all of that has been recognized. It is a valuable resource. I'm interested to know a little bit more about how the council uses that, and in particular, I would imagine that it's a valuable tool when you're thinking about an investment of resources. You touched on that a little bit when you were talking, but can you talk a bit more about how that can drive the investment of resources for the city?
Yeah, another example would be how we engage in services in the city. The folks that live in the city, based on the languages that they may speak. We make sure that we're able to provide different language resources and more heavily targeted in a certain area of the city where they may live. For example, in the Lincoln district in the East Side area, we have a higher Asian populations, and so they may speak Vietnamese, Khmer, or any number of languages. And that equity index helps direct some of those language access resources into certain parts of our city that might be more readily used.
And I know that's important to you as the first Cambodian-American council member, if I understand correctly. This is important to you, and I've heard you on the dais many times talking about the importance of recognizing the different communities and cultures. Can you talk about how your own background plays into the work that you do as a council member?
Yeah, thank you for that. Being Cambodian is very near and dear to my heart. Obviously, I grew up in a Cambodian household. My mother fled from the Cambodian genocide in the early 80s and came to the United States as a refugee. And those growing up was challenging in that kind of environment because of the intergenerational trauma that a genocide can bring on a community. And to be in this position to be a representative of the Cambodian community and the larger AAPI community as well. There's not many of us in elected leadership, and being the first is tremendous. I feel that pressure, that weight, but I'm also honored by the community that surrounded me. I've had young men and women and young kids actually come up to me just inspired And I never thought I'd be in that position, right? Like here's Joe Bushnell coming up, but like I really see that they're inspired to potentially go into public service themselves because they see themselves in me. And I'm really proud of that. And being the first, not just as elected on the city council, but in the state of Washington itself, as far as I know. Someone will probably correct me one day, but I doubt it because there's not a ton of us, but there is enough of us that we do have a big impact on this community. And we came from basically nothing to. It took us 2 generations to be able to produce somebody that could come up and to be elected office.
And when you are looking at the issues before the council, does that background provide any perspective or give you maybe do you think it provides a different perspective than your other council members?
It can, absolutely. Not just my upbringing, but some of the values and the culture that I grew up in and brought together. My family practiced Buddhism, and so I have that background, but also recognition. We since I've been on council, every year since I've been on council, we've done a Cambodian genocide awareness week, and it's really brought together the larger Cambodian community who may have never have come into council chambers ever. They've never engaged the city government ever until now, and that's part of that representation and what's happening. And that never would have happened if someone of Cambodian descent hadn't been on the council. And I really want to continue that on, and I really want to try and open those doors for other communities to also have that representation and also feel that they belong in council chambers as well.
It's so important. Creating that access so that people can be a part of the system and have their voices heard is such an important part and such a value that the city has. You talked about one of the projects that you supported this past year. What are some of the other things that are important that you're focusing on?
Yeah, I'm really focused on some of our public safety issues. Hosmer in particular is a big part of my district, and we've had some challenges there for a long time. I've made personal investments in going out there, talking with business owners, residents on a regular basis to understand the issues that they're going through, and also work with the city to try and direct resources to support our residents and businesses down there so that they can live their best lives and have we can turn that street into something we can be proud of. And I'm really optimistic on the road we're going down. We've made some pretty significant strides in building community down there. There's still more room to go, and I'm really happy that the police department and other city departments are working together to build a coalition of not just city departments, but also other local jurisdictions like our health department to really look at Hosmer in a holistic way on seeing things that we can do, whether it's social services, whether it's public works projects, whether it's investments with other business community members coming down there. It's a holistic approach to really support that neighborhood that's been in distress.
So the city's violent crime reduction plan has identified District 5 as an area of focus. Do you see that as playing into what you're talking about with bringing the services, or how do you think it connects and impacts an area like Hosmer?
Yeah, it definitely, it doesn't surprise me. We follow the data in order to help inform our decisions, and the police department's data has shown that Hosmer in this particular area has had a lot of challenges with crime and violent crime and other property crimes as well. And so the extra attention is really great. And I really appreciate the violent crime reduction plan and how it looks to address these issues holistically. It's not necessarily just about sending a ton of police into an area and turning it an occupation zone, right? It's more about community building, making sure we do have that police presence there and we're holding folks accountable, but we're also making sure we're elevating the community around there to feel safe and to be able to go out and walk and patronize the different businesses and feel like they can walk up and down the street in a safe way. And that includes working with the health department, that includes working with other city departments to build that coalition to get the changes we need down there.
Because part of the crime plan also includes going into those areas that they identify and working to improve the conditions that are leading to some of the criminal activity. So I think that leads and ties very well into the kinds of things that you're talking about with the improvements and the services and the emphasis. What are some of the things that you're hoping to see out of all of this for your district and the Hosmer area in particular?
Yeah, I want whatever changes to happen there to happen beyond myself. For example, I would like to update our comprehensive plan to include plans that have the Hosmer corridor specifically. I'd like to see road investments. I'd like to see trees and beautification. I'd like to see additional businesses come down there and make investments. And I'd also like to see the residents feel safe and be able to walk around and allow their children to play. I'd like to see traffic slowed down a bit. There's a myriad of things I would like to see in that area, and Hosmer didn't get to this point overnight, and it's going to take time, investment, and energy over time to get what we want to see happen down there. But I really also want to see that the community is leading the changes that they want to see down there as well. I think it's really important to continue the community engagement we've started and follow through on actions that will support the community. I'm really proud of some of the groups that have sprung up recently. Sun Alliance, which is Stafford United Neighbors. If you live in the Stafford community, definitely check them out. I'm also really proud of the South Neighborhood Council. They've really stepped up to support our Hosmer neighbors, as well as the newly formed Hosmer Business Association, which is a small group of businesses that are on Hosmer that are working to build up a coalition to support each other.
So you, if we're talking about the community, you listed a lot of issues that you're hoping to see get addressed over time. Those are big and really meaty issues. So what are you looking to prioritize, say, over the next year? What are you going to focus your energies on and prioritize in that list, or any others?
Yeah, public safety being number one. Unless people feel safe, those investments that are needed down there aren't going to be made. And so making sure that we are able to address some of the violent crime that's been happening there and property crimes is really paramount for me. From that safety and security, we can start talking about working with the community on what the future of the area looks like, developing plans to support the area. And that's why I mentioned the comprehensive plan and updating that so that way it's incorporated into our long-term vision beyond myself. And also making sure that we can execute on that. Once we have plans, there's historic investments being made at the federal and state level. Once those plans are in place, we have the opportunity to leverage some of those plans into money that can be actionable on the ground and supporting a lot of the work that our city departments are doing.
So as you're talking, I'm thinking about the complexity and the variety of investments that it takes for the city to be able to move all of those different kinds of projects along, combined with state and federal resources. You started earlier talking about how things were the same and things were different. I'm curious, I would like you to reflect on your views of how things have changed. I mean, the way that the city is now investing in all of these different resources, it's different than it used to be.
Yeah, I feel like the city does a much better job now than in the past of looking at the full circle in terms of projects. It's not just about getting the next shiny thing and building it. It's also about what does it take to maintain that and what does it take to replace it, right? Especially when it comes to capital infrastructure, roads, and things of that nature. We have to look at the whole life cycle. Oftentimes in the past, I felt like folks go after the big shiny, you build it, and then you forget about it, right? It's like, we did this great accomplishment. But that leaves the future generations to think about how we maintain that, how do we operate it in perpetuity, because there's ongoing costs always. And so when I think about, that's why I think about the plans and the long-term visions for these areas, because we need, not only do I want to rectify the issues that we have now, but I don't want them to have necessarily come back in the future. I would like to see those problems resolved in perpetuity. and then make sure our plans are designed around that holistically. And so I think that's been a big mind shift in local governments across the country, but particularly here in Tacoma. And you notice it based on how much we've been growing. The secret is out that Tacoma is a fantastic place to live. We're on national news the other day. I believe it's the Today Show talking about the boomiest cities in America, and Tacoma was right there on national TV. People know that Tacoma is a great place to live, and we have to plan for that growth, and we want to plan for it appropriately. We want to make sure that folks that are living and working and playing in Tacoma have the opportunity to stay in Tacoma, but we also have to plan for that future growth that we know is coming and has been coming, so that way we're not pushing folks out, that have always been in Tacoma out of our city.
Well, and that leads to the obvious question about housing. That's a huge issue with the rising cost of housing and the inability for people to attain housing that they can afford fits into that issue. Is that one of your priorities coming up through the next year?
Yes, housing and housing affordability is definitely a top priority. The cost of housing has increased significantly. We recently passed some really strong new tenant ordinances in order to strengthen the folks that are renting their ability to stay in their own places and make it easier for them to find other places. But it really also comes down to part of the reason the prices have been increasing so much is because we've had an influx of folks coming in. We just simply don't have enough housing for everybody. And we really need to increase the supply because the demand is so high. And with that increased supply, will stabilize the market and bring prices down, or at least stabilize prices, so that way people aren't feeling like they're drowning. And that's where I really appreciate the work that the planning department and the city and everybody that's been engaging in our Home in Tacoma process, because it's really important for us to really engage at all levels. And even if you disagree with the way the city's going about it, it's really important for that engagement and that disagreement to be offered up, so that way we can plan and try and do what we can to mitigate any concerns folks might have. It's not a done deal. It's something that we are working on and molding, and really want to shape and do this right, because when we're talking about the long-term future of our city, this is really what that vision of the city is going to look like. And we want to make sure we're doing it right now, so that way for future generations, and I'd love for my grandkids to be able to afford to live in Tacoma. And unless we make these big changes that are needed, they might not.
And the council will be continuing to work on Home in Tacoma over the next several years, I'm assuming. Yeah, is that your intention?
I'd like to get it done as soon as possible, but we're moving at the speed of government, and we want to make sure we're doing this right. So we do have committee processes. We have a lot of community engagement and feedback. And we also, have a lot of really serious discussions on how Tacoma is going to look and what that's going to look like going forward. We work with historic preservation, as well as the Planning Commission and many other organizations and commissions throughout the city to really implement this whole thing. And I think it's one of those things where it's like a continuous improvement process, right? So just because we have it set for now in certain ways doesn't necessarily mean it's not going to change. And plus, the state might decide to intervene in some ways as well, like they most recently have in the legislative session this past session.
Yes, I think we can be assured that they were continuing their work on housing. So before we wrap up, I just want to ask you, tell us something that you're particularly proud of. What are the things over the past year that you've been involved in that you want to share?
Yeah, there's so much to share, but I'll boil it down to three things. The first thing is being able to represent the city of Tacoma, being able to represent the Cambodian community and the AAPI community has just been a really profound personal impact on my life. Being able to bring folks into the conversation that have never even thought about talking about politics or challenges that the city are facing is just really, that's a personal accomplishment for myself. Another big thing that I'm proud of is our work on youth violence prevention. We've doubled our investment in the last budget to over $2 million for preventing youth violence throughout the city. And working with my colleagues, I've been very proud of like the teen late nights that are happening over the summer. And then the final thing would be just the community. The South Tacoma Neighborhood Council, I can't beat their drum enough, have been so amazing. And our 72nd and D project behind the Fred Meyers, turning that into a mural and a green space and something that we can be proud of as a city. It really shows that community cohesion and working together to solve problems really is just, it makes my heart sing. And I'm really looking forward to the next few years.
You have been involved in so many different issues and projects and you've been such a leader for the city. And I know that you're going to continue doing that in the next year.
I appreciate that.
Any fun events or things that you want to tell people about?
There's the Heritage Festival, which is happening in South Tacoma next month. I really encourage everyone to come out. I forget the exact days, but type in Tacoma Heritage Festival into Google and it'll pop up. Asia Pacific Cultural Center will be hosting that over in South Park, and I'm really excited to be on the hosting committee for that.
Great. Well, it sounds like there are a lot of events coming up, and we'll have to bring you back in the fall so you can talk about some of the fall events that are coming.
Yep, I'm looking forward to it.
Excellent.
Thank you for having me here.
Thank you for watching. I'm Sonia Hallam. We'll see you next time on Inside Tacoma.